A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. Part 2. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Of his fourth way to hinder peace, by spiritual distresses. 1. The nature of these distresses, the ingredients and degrees of them. Whether all distresses of soul arise from melancholy. 2. Satan's method in working them, the occasions he makes use of, the arguments he urgeth, the strengthening of them by fears. 3. Their weight and burden explained in several particulars. Some concluding cautions. Chapter 9, Part 8. What Satan can do in raising up misgiving, tormenting fears, hath been said. And how serviceable this is to his design, I shall show in a few particulars, having only first noted this in the general, that is his design in these distresses is raised to express his utmost height, of malice against men, in pushing them forward to the greatest mischief, by excluding them totally from the lowest degree of the hope of happiness, and by persuading them of the inevitable certainty of their eternal misery, so he doth endeavor, by the strongest impressions of fear, to terrify them to the utmost degree of a frightful amazement, and consequently the effects of that fear are most powerful. 4. 1. By this means, the spirits of men are formed and molded into a frame, most suitable for the belief and entertainment of the most dismal impressions, that Satan can put upon them. For strong fears, like fire, do assimilate everything to their own nature, making them naturally inclined to receive the blackest, the most disadvantageous interpretations of all things against themselves, so that they have no capacity to put any other sense upon what lies in their way, but the very worst. Hence are they possessed with no other thoughts but that they are remediless wretches, desperate miscreants, utterly forsaken of God. They are brought into such a woeful partiality against their own peace, that they cannot judge aright of any accusation, plea, or argument that Satan brings for a proof of their unhappiness. But being filled with strong prejudices of hell, they think every sophism a strong argument, every supposition a truth, and every accusation conclusive of no less than their eternal damnation. Insomuch that their fears do more to discomfit them than all Satan's forces. A dreadful sound being in their ears, Job 15:21, their strength fails them at the appearance of any opposition. As when fear comes upon an army they throw away their weapons, and, by an easy victory, give their backs sometimes to an inconsiderable enemy. 2. Men thus possessed with fear do not only receive into their own bowels every weapon, which Satan directs on purpose, to the wounding and slaying of their hopes, but by a strange kind of belief, they imagine everything to be the sword of an enemy. All they hear or meet with turns into poison to them, for they think everything is against them, promises as well as threatenings, mercies as well as judgments, and that by all these, one as well as another, God, as with a flaming sword turning every way, doth hinder their access to the tree of life. Bilney the martyr, as Latimer in his sermons reports of him, after his denial of the truth, was under such horrors of conscience, that his friends were forced to stay with him night and day. No comforts would serve. If any comfortable place of Scripture was offered to him, it was as if a man should cut him through with a sword. Nothing did him good. He thought that all Scriptures made against him, and sounded to his condemnation. Neither is it so rare a thing for fears to form the imagination into such misshapen apprehensions, as that we should think such instances to be only singular and unusual. But it is a common effect of terror, which few or none escape that are under spiritual distresses. The blackness of their thoughts, make the whole Scripture seem black to them. The unfit medium through which they look, doth discolor every object. So that the book of life, as Mrs. Cath. Bretherge in the like case expressed herself concerning the Bible, seems to be nothing else but a book of death to them. 3. From hence it follows that no counsel or advice can take place with them. Excessive fears do remove their souls so far from peace, that they will not believe there is any hope for them, though it be told them. The most compassionate, serious admonitions of friends, the strongest arguments against despair, the clearest discoveries of the hopes that are before them, etc., effect but little. While they are spoken, it may be, they seem to relieve them a little. But the comfort abides not with them, it is soon gone. Though they cannot answer the arguments brought for them, yet they cannot believe them. As if their souls were now deprived of all power to believe anything for their good, suitable to that expression of Spira, in answer to his friends that labored to comfort him, I would believe comfort, but cannot. I can believe nothing but what is contrary to my comfort, nay, when they are told that many others have been under the like dreadful apprehensions, of everlasting misery who have at last been comforted, and by manifold experience, we find that it is the greatest ease to distressed souls to hear, especially to speak with some that have been in the like case, For this will oft administer some hope that they also may be at last comforted, when the most comfortable promises of the Scripture are a terror to them. Yet this doth not effect the least ease for them sometimes, because some are so wholly possessed with unalterable prejudice against themselves, that they think none are or ever were like them. They compare themselves to Judas and Cain, and think their iniquity to be aggravated by many circumstances far beyond the pitch of them. Thus Spirit judged of himself, I tell you, saith he, my case is mine own, it is singular, none like it. 4. Though fears make the soul inactive to anything of comfort, because they wholly destroy its inclination and alter its bias to hope, yet, on the contrary, they make it very nimble and active, to pursue the conclusions of misery, which they have helped to frame, for the spring of all the faculties of the soul are bent that way. Hence it is that those who are possessed with these agonies will eagerly plead against themselves, and with an admirable subtlety will frame arguments against their peace, coin distinctions, and make strange evasions to escape the force of any consolation that may be offered to them. Their understandings are, as it were, whetted by their fears to an unimaginable quickness. Who would not wonder to hear the replies that some will give to the arguings of their friends that labor to comfort them? What strange answer Spira gave to those that pleaded with him! How easily he seemed to turn off the example of Peter denying Christ, and those scriptures that speak of God's love to mankind, etc., may be seen at large in his narrative. 5. Fears by a strange kind of witchcraft, do not only make them believe that they shall be unhappy, but also, will at last persuade them that they feel and see their misery already. How astonishingly doth Spira speak to this purpose, I find he daily more and more hardens me. I feel it. Answerable to this, I remember, was the case of one who was long imprisoned in deep distresses. He told me that he verily believed that Scripture of Isaiah 66, 23, 24 was fulfilled upon him, from one Sabbath to another shall all flesh come to worship before me, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me. For their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be an abhorring to all flesh. To his own feeling he had the torments of conscience, and the sense of divine wrath was as a burning fire within him, and to his apprehension every look from others was a gazing upon him as a monster of misery, abhorred of all flesh. The nature of spiritual distresses, and Satan's method in working them, being explained, the last thing promised is now to be opened. This is 3. The burden and weight of these distresses, which how grievous, how intolerable it is, may be sufficiently seen in what hath been already said, and may be further evidenced in the particulars following. 1. Those that are wounded with these fiery darts, do at first usually conceal their wound, and smother their grief, being ashamed to declare it, partly because some great transgression, it may be, hath kindled all this fire in their bosoms, and this they are unwilling to declare to others. Partly because they suspect, though no one remarkable sin hath occasioned these troubles, that the discovery of their case will expose them to the wonder and censures of all that shall hear of them. By this means the fire burns with greater vehemency. Their sore runs continually, and having none to speak a word in season for the least relief, it becomes more painful and dangerous. As bodily distempers, concealed by a foolish modesty from the physician, increase the trouble and hazard of the patient. Here have they many strugglings within themselves, many attempts to overcome their fears, but all in vain. They sit alone and keep silence, they flee the company and society of men, they labor after solitary places, where they may weep with freedom, if their tears be not yet dried up, or at least where they may pour out their complaints against themselves. Thanks.